talk about these?
Yes.
This big picture, I don't know who it is, but I have a strong suspicion that it was Grandma Meyer's mother. So it would have been my great-grandmother. And would have been your great-great-grandmother. But I think she had quite a hard life because my mother always spoke of her husband, the great-grandfather, as being a bum that traveled the railways between Denver and Chicago all the time. I don't know how true that was. I didn't ask any questions because I wasn't interested then. This is a picture of that family. And here's my grandmother and Grandpa Smith and my dad right here. And these double cousins that were Aunt Margaret and Sophia, my grandmother, married brothers. So their offspring were a little bit more than plain cousins. And I don't know who these other people are, but they must have been laughing a lot while they were wading in the river. I have no idea the location of it or anything. This is the family that was in the rotogravure of one of the New York City papers, I'm told, of this family. The Ford Times was another magazine that called the Wood Brothers legendary up in that part of the world, around Parshall, Colorado. So they made a mark on the world, and here's my mother. Never remember playing, always remember working to help take care of this family. But she was the first one to be taken away when she must have been about 14 or 15 to Denver, where some other families were acquainted with them, took her in and gave her a job. She went to high school till the 10th grade and then went to a business college. And then after that, got married and moved to Michigan. So the burden of being the oldest child in the family, she escaped. That was good. And she was told later that her mother had hoped that she would go to Denver and help put all of the others through high school. Well, she said, I had no idea that was what she had in mind. So she had to spend the rest of her life wishing she could be near her family when she was in Michigan and they were in Colorado. This little gal died at age 5, Marilyn, and my mother said just a whole lot of things happened to her at one time, and then she died. A Japanese family lived nearby. He came up on some business thing to see Grandpa, and Grandpa showed him the little corpse of Marilyn, and he wept. And she said then a couple days later, the most beautiful floral spray came up from them. Interesting that you, up there in the frontier of the United States settlements, that there was international things going on. I think this was Grampy's graduation picture. I think this is this woman. I think she looks like my grandma, so I think she was my grandmother's mother. This was where we lived on the west side, on the wrong side of the tracks in Mount Pleasant. While they worked, my mother was all prepared to work in the factory that Grandpa Smith had established of American Enamel Products. And Grampy was all prepared mechanically to work in his factory also. So Grammy was in the bookkeeping and Grampy was out in the shop. And they worked for him at minimal wage. And we lived on the west side. This is the only picture I have here of your dad's side of the family. But it's quite a nice picture of them. Their wedding picture was somewhat after their wedding, but that's when they had the portrait done. This was my mother. Here she is when the family was about half the size it ended up being. So here's my mother. She was the second child. Her brother was born first, and then there were about 4 or 5 boys before another girl was born. So you can see how she ended up working most of her young life. But she was then confident and very capable. I grew up wearing homemade clothes that she made, and they were all pretty. And I insisted on a clean dress every day when I went to school because I thought that's what the other girls were doing. And they probably were. I was a war baby. The war lasted from my age 6 until my age about 10 or 11. So everything was economically stretched during the war. But we were all glad to do it because it was in the war effort. Here's the teddy bear that is in this picture. He was much nicer here. And that was one of those Teddy Roosevelt teddy bears. He invented them, and that was big business in those days because the president had a teddy bear. Okay, that's enough for this. I had this piece of my mother's picture enlarged here for her birthday that we celebrated not too long after Grampy died. She turned 80, and I gave her a party there in Mount Pleasant for her 80th birthday, and that's when I had that made. It was a good party because everybody loved Sylvia, and everybody showed up for her party. And I thought it was just a really nice thing to have for her when she was experiencing widowhood, that she could be affirmed by all those friends. And then I made her a big birthday cake to celebrate on the day and invited a few of her closest friends. It was an oblong one with 2 or 3 layers. And I put 80 candles on it. And when we lit all those candles, before we got them all lit, the whole thing went up in one single flame. So we all were blowing out about candles. So that party kind of ended up in a surprising way. Okay, I think I've got it.